Okay, there's the big announcement. We are officially recording. All right, today's training for the How to Ride training is going to do an overview for public transit in Johnson County. We're going to talk about where to find the bus information. And then we'll move on to discounts, passes, fares, and transfers, where to buy passes. We'll talk about how to use the paper bus schedules, and then the elements of riding the bus and all those tricks and tools. And then we will start with the transit technology. So I am Kelly Schneider presenting, and then listening along with me today, I have Shanae, who is a University of Iowa Master's in Social Work student. And Terry, thanks for the tip. I'm going to go back to the slide before that so the people watching the video can see my face and get my contact information there if they'd like to. Just so if any of you in the audience are familiar with Terry, Terry is the mobility coordinator in the county north of us, Lynn County. So he is kind of a pioneer of mobility coordination, as I like to say it. And he's a really great person to work with. So if any of you ever traveled to Cedar Rapids or worked with individuals from the Cedar Rapids area, he's a good contact to have. So Terry, I'm going to give you a plug there to put your information in the chat just in case anybody's looking for that. Okay. So we talked about what we're going to talk about. Now let's get into it. So we're going to start with public transit in Johnson County. So the way public transit in Johnson County is split up is we have our urban area and our rural area. So in our urban areas, the public transit is called fixed routes. So for fixed route systems, we have CAN bus. Excuse me, I'm letting another person in here. CAN bus, Coralville Transit, and Iowa City Transit. Any person that has a disability that prevents them from boarding, riding, or getting to one of those fixed route buses, they can apply to use a specialized service called ADA Paratransit. Coralville and Iowa City Transit both contract with Johnson County Seats for this service, and then CAN bus uses the Bionic bus. So any University of Iowa faculty, staff, or student that has a disability preventing them from boarding, riding, or getting to the fixed route bus can use the Bionic bus after they apply. We'll get into the details of applying and what these services look like more specifically, but this is the general outlay of what services look like here. So in the rural areas, again, Johnson County Seats is providing a demand response service, and we'll get into the details of when that service runs and how to use it. The rural service is open to the general public in Johnson County. So on this slide here, I have a map that shows the outline of the county. And color-coded, which you will see as a theme throughout the rest of the training. When we're talking about the University of Iowa CAN bus, there will be a yellow dot, and then Coralville would be blue, and then Iowa City is red, and then you can see that matches the color scheme of the buses, with Johnson County Seats having green. So as far as county coverage, you can see there in the green on the outside. So any community such as Swisher, Shoeyville, Solon, Lone Tree Hills, Oxford, Tiffin, or the areas in between, those are the areas that are authorized to use Johnson County Seats Rural Demand Response Service. In the urbanized areas, we talked about Iowa City Transit, Coralville Transit, and CAN bus. So those are going to cover North Liberty, Coralville, Iowa City, and University Heights. You can see here that there is overlap between those three urbanized systems, and it's common for riders to use multiple systems to make their trips, and the systems work together to make that as seamlessly as possible for riders. All right, here's the general service times up here on the screen. We've got the University of Iowa that has two different schedules. They have a schedule that's Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. through 1 a.m. and then Saturdays and Sundays, 11 a.m. through 1 a.m. And that's when school is in session. On the breaks, such as summer, winter, spring break, they offer a different schedule. Then for Coralville Transit, they operate Monday through Friday, 5:35 a.m. through 12 a.m. and Saturdays, 7:15 a.m. through 8 p.m. Iowa City Transit is offering Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. through 10:45 p.m. and Saturday, 7 to 7. Seats rural service, so all those areas outside of the urbanized areas that we saw on the last slide in green, is operating Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. through 5 p.m. I'm going to take a quick pause here and allow anybody to jump in and ask a question if there's any questions that have come up. And as far as asking those, you're welcome to unmute yourself or drop that in the chat. Okay, we'll keep going here. If something comes up later, that's totally fine. All right, so let's get into paratransit here. So paratransit was born out of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So basically, this service is stating anytime you're offering a fixed route service, there should be a comparable service for people with disabilities that are unable to get to, board, or ride those fixed route services. So in our area, as we talked about, there is Johnson County Seats that's offering the door-to-door service for Coralville or Iowa City Transit riders that are unable to ride the fixed route buses. And then of course we have the University of Iowa service for faculty and staff called CAMBus, Bionic Bus. So both of these services require an application. So if you live in North Liberty or Coralville, you would be applying with Coralville Transit for the paratransit service. And then if you live in Iowa City, you would apply with Iowa City Transit for the paratransit service. University Heights student residents would apply with the city of University Heights, and not listed there. If you're University of Iowa faculty, staff, or student, you would apply with CAMBus to use the Bionic Bus services. So once you apply for the service, there is a 21-day processing period. So it does take a little while to get the services rolling there for people. During the applications, the rider or the applicant would explain how it's functionally impossible for them to ride. So that's getting into some of the details about their disability and how that impacts them. In addition to the rider's point of view, it is a requirement that a physician or a medical professional verifies how it's functionally impossible for the rider to use the fixed route bus. In these applications, if you're assisting somebody with a disability or you have a disability yourself, you can actually request a companion or a personal care attendant that can ride with you when you're using the paratransit services. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions in the chat that I'm going to go ahead and read out loud. Does Seats Paratransit schedule match the fixed route schedule? Yes, Terry, that is a perfect point that I didn't mention before. Anytime that the fixed route buses are operating, there must be paratransit service as well. So if you go back to those service times that we were looking at with the University of Iowa and then Coralville Transit and Iowa City Transit, anytime the fixed route buses are operating, that is the same time that the paratransit services will operate. So perfect question, thank you. And this was a direct message, but somebody was asking about the North Liberty paratransit schedule operating on very specific times. And yes, this is the case. And the reasoning for that is because the fixed route system that's operating in North Liberty that's provided by Coralville Transit is a limited schedule. So there's only one trip in the morning and then one trip in the evening. So that's why you see a little bit specific paratransit times for that area. Any other questions while I'm addressing these topics? Okay. So that is paratransit. All right, so let's get back into those green areas. So we talked about the urbanized areas, and now we've got the outer portions of the county, what we call rural. So here's another map that is a very detailed explanation of in the gray where the urbanized areas are, and then all of those shaded in green is what is considered rural areas. So the same buses and the same drivers and the same agency that's providing those paratransit services for Coralville and Iowa City riders is also providing rural transportation services called demand response. So SEAT's rural services are Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. through 5 p.m., except on holidays. And unlike the paratransit service, there is no application that's required. So when you call the SEAT's dispatch and you provide them your address, as long as you're in a rural address, you will be authorized to ride. They do require a day's notice, but 2 days or more is better to get your trip in. Okay, before we start talking about the fixed route buses, I'm going to take a pause here and see if there's any questions. Okay. So fixed route buses essentially mean a bus that follows a designated route, picking up passengers along the way. So we have up here on the screen a picture of the Towncrest route, which is also called route number 9. The green dots that you see indicate all of the different bus stops along the way. And then that is connected by kind of a yellow-green, which is the path of travel. So it's kind of like a connect the dot deal there, if you can imagine. So again, the fixed route buses that we're going to start talking about are CAM Bus, Coralville Transit, and Iowa City Transit. All right, so here is a picture, a snapshot of the fixed route bus coverage. So back to that question about fixed route service in North Liberty, you can see here there is a yellow line that's going all the way up into North Liberty and then back in through town to the Star, which is the downtown interchange. And that is that commuter route that we were talking about that has one trip in the morning and then one trip in the evening. Then we've got, you can see where the Coralville coverage area is, and then Iowa City coverage area. The star in kind of the bottom middle there represents the downtown interchange. The downtown interchange is one of the most popular transfer locations. So for Iowa City Transit, they are operating on a hub and spoke model. Hub and spoke model means that all of the routes start and finish at the downtown interchange. So it's likely that when you're completing your trip, you might be starting on the outside of the route and riding into downtown, getting off of that bus, and then starting on another bus to complete your trip. So let's say you are at City High School. So if you were to get on the bus at City High School, you would need to ask the driver for a transfer. Transfer slips are free, but you do need to ask for that on your first bus that you're riding. So let's say you board the bus at City High School, ask for your transfer slip. That bus would then eventually get you to the center of the system, which is the downtown interchange, where you see the photo there. And then you get off that bus and then pop on one of the West Side buses and offer the driver the transfer slip so you don't have to pay again. And then that would eventually get you to your West High location. Any questions about transferring or the system model? Okay. Here is a zoomed in photo of or image, excuse me, of the downtown interchange. You can see here that the CAN buses are in yellow, and those have a good handful of the CAN bus routes do connect with the downtown interchange. Not all of them, but a good handful of them do. And you can see that there's two different places that those pull into at the interchange. So one of those being over there on Clinton, and then another location on Washington Street. On both sides of Washington Street, one on the old Capitol Mall side and the other on the Pinecrest side, you'll see each of the Iowa City routes pulling in or taking off from those different sides of Washington Street. The Coralville buses are always going to be around the corner there on Washington Street. So it's common that if you're switching from a Coralville bus to an Iowa City bus, you'll have to take a walk around the corner. But don't worry, the transfer slips are accepted between the systems. And again, that is a free transfer, so you do not have to pay more than once for your one-way trip. I'm just going to go ahead and say this now, that the University of Iowa CAN bus is free, so you would never need to pay to use those services. But we'll get into the passes and fares a little bit more specifically as we go on. All right, so if you think back to those little green dots, those are the bus stops. So here's a picture or example of a bus stop sign. All right, so this particular sign is, there's now a Come and Go there, and this is across the street from the Big Grove Brewery there on Gilbert Street. So that is an Iowa City Transit stop, but for the purpose of getting to know the stops, I have a photo of each of the bus stops for CAN bus, Coralville, and Iowa City Transit. Circled on all of those, I have the 4-digit stop ID, and that can be helpful for you when you're planning your trip. Is specific to that stop, and no other stops will have that number. So when you're asking for information about arrivals to that stop, that 4-digit number is helpful for you. You can also see that there's a QR code, so that digitized square there on the bottom right-hand corner. There's also the phone number for the former Bongo system, and we'll talk a little bit about that here soon. And the texting information and all that good stuff. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about where to find the bus information. There's a couple of different methods here that we're going to talk about, and I always advise people to use what works best for them, but for the purpose of this training, I want you to know it all. Any questions before we keep going along here? Okay. All right, so one of the best places to find the bus route information is on the actual buses. So this is a photo of an Iowa City Transit bus and all the different brochures for the 13 different transit routes that Iowa City Transit operates. Above that, you'll see the 2 photos that explains what side of the street, what side of Washington Street the bus is pulling away from. So this is a great place to get the bus route brochures. And then if you are frequenting Coralville Transit, there's a few other ways to get information. So I have up here the 319-248-1790. That is the Coralville Transit customer service. So anytime you have a question about routes or stops or service times, if there's service interruptions from cold, probably not cold, I know they're out there running this morning, but snow or detours, construction, any of the information, calling the Coralville Transit phone number would be a great place to get information. So that's a good phone number to have saved in your contacts. You can also find, of course, all of the route information for Coralville Transit on the Coralville Transit website. In the middle of the screen, I have a screenshot of the Coralville Transit notification list. So if you wanted to subscribe, you can elect to receive emails or text about services. for Coralville Transit. So this could be if they're running a survey about transit services, or if there's any changes to the passes or fares or interruptions from detours. This would be a notification that you could elect to receive. And that is how you do that. So that is accessible from the Coralville Transit website. And again, if this is something that you need guidance on, I can walk you through this process. I'm always available to help. All right, so in addition to the Coralville buses, you can also find Coralville bus routes at City Hall there, and then at the Coralville Public Library. All right, so now we've got Iowa City here. Listed up there is 356-5151. That's going to be the Iowa City Transit customer service, who would be able to answer any questions you might have about riding the bus, or other changes that may impact your travel. Bus schedules are going to be available at icgov.gov/bus schedules. Iowa City also has a e-subscriptions as well, where you can elect to be notified about service changes or updates from your email or text. So that is how you would do that from the Iowa City system. And then the bus schedules are also available at the Iowa City City Hall. So there's a photo of that there. And then the parking and transit office, which is at 335 East Iowa Avenue. So that is a picture of the front door there on the bottom left-hand corner. And then also downtown at the Iowa City Public Library, you can find bus schedules. All right, so here is a picture of the CAN bus station that you can kind of see from this angle. On the left-hand side, there's the bleachers over there at Kinnick Stadium. So this is just in a location by the stadium, and then right across the street from the University of Iowa. It's actually accessible by Skywalk. So if you ever wanted to travel from CAN bus to the hospital, you could do that outside of the elements. Phone number there is listed for CAN bus. So again, all those customer service needs that you can have could be answered there. And then we have the CAN bus website, which you could find general information about their service times and routes. All right, so social media, it's possible that some of you may have found out about the training today from social media. So if you did, that's great. Social media is also a great way to keep in the know on what's happening with transit. So we have a screenshot here of each of Coralville, Iowa City, and CAN bus Facebook pages. You can see here the Coralville one on the bottom left-hand side is talking about the fare changes that happened last summer. And then also last summer, the Iowa City changed their routes. So they were posting on a regular basis information about those route changes coming up, and then advertising using the transit app as a tool for getting around. And then here is a post from CAN bus, and I think this one was talking about the masking requirement, and then also their shuttle services that they were doing for the basketball game. So those are just some examples of content that you might find on social media. So if you haven't yet, I encourage you to follow these pages. All right, I'm going to take a pause here and see if there's any questions. And it looks like, okay, from John, I've assisted with applications for disabled bus pass. Can you speak briefly on what this process looks like from the Johnson County side of things? You bet, John. I think I'm trying to think of where. I definitely, that is a topic that we'll talk about of obtaining the disabled bus passes. So if you hang tight, we'll get to that here soon. Any other questions right now? Okay. All right. So in addition to social media, calling the the customer service lines. You can also set up to get notifications from some of the technology platforms. So on the left-hand side of the screen, I have the Iowa City area transit services, which is, if you've been around in the area for a while, they used to be under the name of Bongo. So using the text code or texting the phone number 414-11, you can get information about Coralville Transit, Iowa City Transit, and Canvas from this service platform. So as you can see, this one's pretty dated. This is back from October, but this screenshot shows you that during the homecoming parade and activities, they moved the downtown interchange to Dubuque Street and Court, so where the Burlington Trailway station is. So that was a notice that they sent their text, sent by text to let riders know about that change. On the right-hand side is a couple of screenshots of the transit app. So we'll talk more in depth about how to use that app. And I have a video to show you some different tricks. But on the transit app, you can set up to receive notifications. So if you frequently use Route 1, that's pictured here, you can have transit app push you notifications when there's changes specifically to Route 1. So if there's a detour and it's no longer pulling down your street, you should get a push notification on where your required stop would be. Transit app also has these kind of a caution symbol, which is a triangle with a exclamation point that's circled there in red. Those will notify you, if you click on them, what service updates are there for that particular route. And then an ongoing caution triangle symbol that you'll see is for the federal masking mandate. So at this time, there are requirements for masking on all of the buses in our areas. Okay. All right, so now we're going to talk about discounts, passes, and fares. So this is hopefully should answer your question, John. If it doesn't, just let me know and we'll get to you there. So I already kind of gave you a heads up that there is no fare for CAN bus and it's completely open to the general public. So for the purpose of passes, transfers, fares, and discounts, we're going to be focusing on Iowa City Transit and Coralville Transit. Okay. And we start with the best first, so discounts. So how to get around for a discount. So starting with the disabled bus pass. So we now have up here a photo of the disabled bus pass, which is a discount for Iowa City or University Heights residents with disabilities. So the definition for this pass is disability means with respect to an individual, a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life areas. There is a photo there on the left-hand side of the screen of the disabled bus pass. There was some recent changes to this pass that really helped the riders, where you can see the smiley faces covering up the old news. The new news is the disabled riders can now use their disabled bus pass on the fixed route buses anytime, any bus. There's no restrictions to when that discount is applied. So in order to obtain this pass, you would fill out the application that you see on the right-hand side. That requires your personal information, and then you need to have a physician or a healthcare professional sign off saying that you do have a disability and whether or not that is permanent or temporary. Once this application is completed, and it's really up to the person to determine the best way to reach their provider. If they have an appointment coming up, I think it's wonderful to take this application in person, and I can always help somebody print that off. So that's not a barrier for anybody. Or sometimes we can fax this to a person with the disabilities medical office, or mail it, email it if they allow that. And then once we get all that signed and said and done, that's turned into the 335 East Iowa Avenue office. And again, that can be sent by email, fax, scan, or if you want to, you can take that application in person. Was there a question? Okay. So here in the middle of the screen is a photo again of that 335 East Iowa Avenue office. And then if you do take that in person, they will issue you that plastic card that you see that says disabled pass for Iowa City Transit. So that is the Iowa City University Heights residents. The question in the chat here is, can Iowa City disabled pass be used for Coralville buses? 100%, Nicole, yes, you can. So these passes are transferable, so you can use your Iowa City bus pass on a Coralville bus and vice versa. And then Terry asked, do the transit agencies have their own apps or do they direct people to transit apps? So yes, Terry, they all use transit app or the ICAT system. So they don't have their own separate apps. They're all merged together, which makes it nice for trip planning. Okay, from John, I found to have access to free single ride passes for Coralville and Iowa City available on hand as needed, helpful when needed. Did you say that all service providers and attendants today would receive some for their clients? I don't remember saying that. I don't, oh, where can we pick these up? Just kidding. Okay, I actually don't have any single ride passes, but I can say now that single ride passes are available at the Iowa City Library. You can get, what is it? How does that go? A free bus pass to use that day. So if you stop by the Iowa City Library and show your library card to the reception, they can provide you with a single ride ticket to get your ride home. And I think you can do that twice a week. Other locations include the community food pantry. They also have a small allotment of single ride passes. And if you are working with somebody that started new employment, I believe they have bus fare that they can cover for the first 2 weeks of new employment. So those are two agencies I would definitely check with. And then I think that the DHS office down here in the first floor on my building, where you would apply for Medicaid or food assistance, has bus passes as well. So those are some of the places. The bus passes that I have, unfortunately, are saved for travel training purposes. So if I'm ever working with somebody, I would definitely be able to provide the fare. The county does not have any sale outlets for the passes. However, you can buy those directly from the transit systems. And if you're looking, I don't know if you have your email in the chat yet, but I can send you the direct contacts for buying the passes if you're interested. Any other questions? Okay. So let's pop on over here to Coralville. Yes, so the Coralville City Hall would sell the single ride passes as well as the 335 Iowa Avenue for Iowa City. Okay. And I always encourage people to see if they're eligible for the disabled pass or the senior pass that we'll talk about soon. That's always a more ongoing discount for free rides. So now we're over here in Coralville. So Coralville and North Liberty residents, as we mentioned, can apply to use the disabled bus pass, which allows free rides anytime on any Iowa City or Coralville bus. The application process is very similar, as you can see here in the application there. You need to fill out your information and then have a medical professional verified disability. Once you turn that into Coralville City Hall, you can get the disabled pass that you see pictured there on the left-hand screen. Okay, so there's a few other discounts too. 65 and older can ride the buses for free as well. So if you are a Iowa City resident or University Heights resident, you would simply just need to show your ID that states your age. And then if you are a Coralville resident or North Liberty resident, you can actually pick up your senior pass at your city hall. If you are a Seats card holder, so somebody that's been certified to use Seats Paratransit, you can also ride the fixed route buses for free. So if you find that there are some trips that you would like to make using the fixed route buses over Paratransit, you are welcome to do that at the cost of $0. If you have a Medicare card, you can also ride for free on the fixed route transit buses. So lots of opportunities there. Okay, any questions about the discounts before we start talking about passes and fares? Let me check the chat. Okay. The question is Medicare card that applies to both Iowa City and Coralville. So both of the programs, both of the systems use the free for Medicare card holders. Same with Seats card holders. So that was one nice thing that they did like last summer, was streamline those processes. Okay, so let's talk about some of the locations to buy passes. So all of the Hy-Vees in our area, so there's 2 in Coralville, we've got in Iowa City, First Avenue, Iowa City Waterfront, Iowa City North Dodge, and then also the Hy-Vee drugstore all have bus passes for sale. We already talked about that 335 East Iowa Avenue office. They've got a lot of stuff going on there, and bus passes for sale is one of them. And then, of course, you can buy bus passes directly from Coralville Library, Coralville City Hall, or the Coralville Rec Center. Okay, here are a couple of pictures of different passes that are available. On the left-hand side, we have the 31-day pass. So that is for sale for $32 for adults and $16 for youth age 5 through 18. It is free for anybody 5 and under to ride both Coralville and Iowa City buses. The 31-day pass will allow you unlimited rides for that 31-day period. And again, this could be used between Coralville and Iowa City buses. The first time you swipe that card for using it, you are supposed to use that in your city of residence. And then 31 days later, your pass would expire and you would need to purchase a new one. If you would like to, there's also a 10 ride pass. So if you're not riding quite as regularly, for $8.50, you can purchase the 10 ride pass. This pass does not expire. And then on the back, as you can see, it will keep track by stamping how many rides you've used. So you can know how many rides are left on that particular pass. And again, these passes are fully integrated. If your pass says Iowa City Transit, don't worry, you can still use that on a Coralville bus and vice versa. Okay, both of the systems, Coralville and Iowa City, also have a 24-hour pass. This pass is purchased directly from the bus driver, and it is for sale at $2. So again, once the bus driver prints off the pass for you, 24-hour later, your pass would expire. But within the 24-hour time period, you can ride as much as you would like to for the cost of $2. And again, that's on both the Iowa City and Coralville buses. Okay, fare. if you have the preference, you can just bypass all of those passes and say, I'm just going to pay the driver directly. It's $1 in the format of a $1 bill or 4 quarters. Again, that would be half the price for anybody age 5 through 18. Exact fare is required. And in this situation, if you're going to be writing if it's going to take you 2 buses to get to your final destination and you're paying cash, you would definitely need to ask for a transfer slip. That way, when you get on the second bus, you don't have to pay again. It's always just $1 for your one-way trip, whether that's 2 buses or not. Okay, so on the note of transfers, let me actually pause here and make sure there's no questions before I keep chugging away. Do you have to be an Iowa City resident to use senior discounts? Visiting daughter in Iowa City. Okay, so I'm trying to think back to this. It's been a little while. I think that if you're a senior visiting the area, you can get a temporary pass, but I'm going to have to ask since the policies changed, so that if you're boarding an Iowa City bus and you have your driver's license that says you're 65 or older, you wouldn't have to, it doesn't matter where you're from. So as long as your ID is not expired and it has your birth date, which states you're over 65, you can ride those Iowa City buses for free. So there's no extra steps there. I hope that answers your question. Okay. Any other questions before we talk about transfers? All right. So I have up here on the top right-hand side a picture of the hub and spoke model to kind of refresh your memory on what we looked at earlier. Remember, when you're riding across town or from one side of town to another, it's likely that you will need to use two buses. And there are certain passes where you do need to ask for a transfer and certain passes where you don't. So if you're using the 24-hour pass that's unlimited rides, or the 31-day pass that's unlimited rides, you can actually just skip the asking for a transfer step. There's no reason to ask since your rides are unlimited. However, if you're paying the cash or using one of those single ride tickets that we talked about, or a 10-ride pass, you would need to ask for a transfer in the event it's taking more than one route to reach your final destination. On the bottom of the screen, I have a picture of what the transfer slip looks like. So it has that magnetic strip. It's just a piece of paper. It's going to say when the transfer was issued and when it expires. So in this case, it was just a little bit over an hour than that person had before their transfer slip expires. So if you're thinking about being downtown, I think an hour's time would give you enough time to pop over to the library and return a book, or maybe even stop by Iowa City Transit parking office and pick up a disabled pass, or buy more passes, or get a coffee from the old Capitol Mall. That might be a little bit too much for an hour, but the key here is the expiration time will be printed on the back of that pass, and you get about an hour to do the transfer. Okay, pausing for any questions that might come up. All righty. And now we're going to get into how to use the paper bus route brochures. So up here on the screen, on the far left-hand side is a picture of the Coralville Transit routes. In the middle is a Canvas schedule. And then on the right-hand side is some photos of the Iowa City schedules. All right, excuse me. Zooming in here a little bit more on the Coralville Transit schedule, you can see here that they use a dashed black line that indicates the path of travel, and red dots that indicate the bus stops. For Coralville schedules, they use stars that indicate major time points within the schedule. So when you're looking at the timetable, you're not going to see every single stop listed on the timetable. You're actually only going to see the time points that are indicated by a star. So it's possible that your stop may fall in between two of the stars. So in that case, you would choose to use the time schedule that is the time before or the star before. So let's take a look at the back of a Iowa City Transit bus route schedule, excuse me. So the Coralville ones are very similar. I think it's important to make sure that you're paying attention to the day and the time. So the Saturday schedule times may be different, will be different from the Monday through Friday schedule time. So you can see how that's listed there. So this particular route that we're looking at is Route 5, Lower Muscatine, Kirkwood. Each column that you see represents a time point. So if you look at column A, you can see this is all the times that the Route 5 departs the downtown interchange. Jumping all the way over there to column I, that's when the bus for Route 5 arrives back to downtown. So let's say we're going to Kirkwood College. So Kirkwood College is indicated here in column C, and you have classes that start at 10 o'clock. So if we travel down the Kirkwood College timeframe, we'll see that the earliest or probably the best time for you to arrive would be the 9:51. If we travel all the way to the left-hand column to the beginning of the route, we find that in order to get to Kirkwood College by 9:51, you would need to board the Kirkwood Route 5 bus at 9:40. So that is how the trip planning works. And I do have those directions listed up here, and I'm going to let you guys take a look through that really quickly while I grab a drink. Okay. Any questions? Let's see, we got one in the chat. Terry's heading out to the next meeting and we're just coming up to 10, so I completely understand that. Thanks for attending, Terry. It was great to see your presence here. So back to the trip planning, that is the analog method. Again, I'm happy to work with people one-on-one on this skill. I think it's an important skill to know. Even if you plan to use transit technology, it's always nice to have this as a backup method in case your phone dies or there's no connection, or sometimes technology is just funky like that. So that is definitely a service that I can offer. Any questions before we keep going along here? All right. So now we're going to talk about the actual elements of riding the bus. So we've got our tickets purchased. We know where the route's going. Now we're actually going to get on the bus. So as you can see here, there is a picture of an Iowa City Transit bus that shows how a bicycle can be loaded to the front of the bus. So all of the Iowa City and Coralville buses have bike racks that can accommodate 2 different bicycles. And if you are a bike rider or know somebody that rides a bike, I have a video that I can send you that shows how to get your bike on those racks and how to operate that system. Okay, so when you're waiting at the bus, there's a couple of things that you want to keep in mind. Not all of the bus stops have shelters, but a good handful of them do. It's important to be 3 to 5 minutes early. There's no smoking. Have your payment ready. Look for oncoming vehicles and do not walk in front of the bus. When you see the bus coming down the street, it's a good idea to wave to the driver to indicate that you're somebody that plans to board. If you are able to do so, you should plan to board in the front door of the bus. This is where there is an accessible entrance to, and the entire bus can kneel, lowering itself closer to the ground, and flip out the ramp if needed. Here is a better picture of what the bus looks like with the ramp engaged there on a picture of the CAN bus in the bottom right-hand corner. So once that bus pulls up, you're going to want to check the scroll and make sure it's listing the route that you plan to travel. We already talked about the ramp. In the winter, it's good to practice using the handrails. It can get pretty slippery. We'll discuss the elements of the fare box next, but you'll pay the fare, ask for a transfer if you plan to transfer and need one, and tell the driver where you're going. We have a small enough community that you can introduce yourself and say, hello, I'm Kelly. I'm running the bus to Kirkwood. And they may tell you their name back. And it's okay to have that quick conversation as you're walking by. Okay, so here's what the fare box looks like. So I have this color coded here, but I will say that you can always ask the driver if you're not sure, because it's not likely that you'll remember this the first time that you ride, and it takes a little bit to get the hang of it. But for the purpose of the training, if you plan to pay with coins, you would drop those into the coin slot that's circled in red. If you're going to be paying with a dollar bill, that's slid into the yellow circled spot. If you are paying with a 10 ride or 31-day ride, that gets fed into the purple circled slot. And if you're using one of those senior or disabled pass cards, that gets tapped right on the bullseye and you can walk by. Also in that purple circled slot, if you're asking for a transfer, the transfer will pop out of that slot after the driver issues that to you. Okay, once you're riding the bus, it's a good idea to leave, best practice to leave the front seats open for elderly and disabled. I have a green square around the bottom picture there that shows how the seats can be lifted up. So that way a wheelchair device could be secured for travel. There are seat back sensations. So when you're walking along through the bus, you're going to want to hang on to those. Remain seated until deboarding and listen to the automated recordings as they go by. So this will tell you what stops the bus is coming up to. And it's also best practice to look out the windows to see what landmarks you're approaching. Any questions right now? All right, stop request. So the perimeter of the bus has a stop request cord. So you can see here on the photo on the right, there is a yellow cord that circulates the bus. This is called the stop request cord. By pulling this cord, it indicates to the driver that you're ready to get off the bus and your stop is approaching. You should plan to pull this cord about a half a block before your stop. This gives the driver enough time to know that you're ready to get off there. If you're not sure when to pull the cord, it's okay to communicate with the driver when you're boarding and say, I intend to get off at Kirkwood College and I don't know when to pull the cord. They can provide you feedback on the best time to do that. Okay, when you're getting off, you should use the opposite door that you got on. So this is because there's a lot of times that there's people waiting to get on the bus. So People getting off should use the back door. People getting on should use the front door. Now, if you're somebody that needs the ramp, by all means, you are completely welcome to use the front door of the bus so that you can exit using the accessible entrance. Once you get off, make sure you wait for the bus to pull off before crossing the street. You'll never want to cross the street before the bus pulls off. Okay, let's take a quick pause here. We're doing really great on time. We're going to start talking about some of the technology, and I will allow you guys to ask any questions here. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some of the different technology platforms that are available for riding the bus. We're going to start with the oldest, and the oldest used to be called Bongo. So if you've been in the area for a while, you may have heard that name. Bongo is now being called the Iowa City Area Transit Services, or ICATs for short. What Bongo does is it provides live information for Coralville Transit, Iowa City Transit, and the University of Iowa CAN bus systems. So there are several ways that you can access information from the Bongo system. One of the ways is by calling the phone number 471-4155. When you call that phone number, you'll be prompted to enter your stop ID, and that's where that 4-digit ID that we saw on the bus stop sign several slides ago will come in handy. By punching in that 4-digit ID, the ICAT system will repeat back to you how quickly the bus is going to arrive to that particular stop that you asked for. You can also check out the ICAT's website online, and I will take you guys there since we have enough time to do so. Or if your sign's close enough to you, you can scan the QR code on that particular bus stop sign, and it will also provide you the same information on how quickly the bus is coming to that particular stop. So if you'd like to, you can also text the ICAT system. So the word Bongo is still used here for the texting feature. And what you would do is address a message to 41411, and in the body of the message state BONGO, and then type in that 4-digit stop number. So that is something that you could practice now or on your own. But I'm going to take you to the Bongo website. Okay, can you guys see the website pulled up now? Okay. Shanae said yes. Thank you, Shanae. Okay, so this is the ICAT's former Bongo website. Starting up here in the banner, you can see the tabs for routes, stops, and maps. So if you click on routes, that's a good place to start. You can see all the routes for Coralville, CAN bus, and Iowa City. They're listed in columns. So by clicking on one of these routes, it will pop up for you that specific path of travel. And I clicked on Route 20, Iowa River Landing. So there is a map here that shows all of the stops and then the path of travel that Route 20 makes. Below that is a list of all the stops that are included along the way. So from here, I can zoom in and access the bus stop information that way. So here's a bus stop next to Trader Joe's. Or if I want to get on the other side closer to the hotels, I can click that way. And I can also click on the stops from here. So let's see how quickly this bus route's going to arrive to the dental college. There it comes. Okay. So I clicked on stop 0246 to see what buses are arriving to the dental college. And here's a list of all of the different, there's a lot of routes that go by there. So again, this is going to be color coded. So this particular stop is served by Coralville, which is the lines in blue. And then in yellow are the CAN bus routes. So arriving soon, we have Route 23 and Route 21. It tells you the service agency that's providing that and the bus route number. In 5 minutes, 9 minutes, and then as you can see, it just updated. So that answers the question in the chat from Rebecca. Is the Bongo app still fairly accurate compared to the website? So Rebecca, that is a great question. So if you've been around in the area for a little while and have the Bongo app on your phone, you are grandfathered into having that app in operation. However, I do not recommend using it. There are no new downloads that will be available for the Bongo app. So at this point, if you were to go to your app store and search the Bongo app, it would actually redirect you to the Transit app. And we'll talk a little bit more about the Transit app, but the Bongo, or excuse me, the ICAT's website is still a great place to get to know the bus routes and stops. There's a question about the fare for CAN bus, and there is no fare for CAN bus. It's completely free and open to the general public. So anybody can board and ride the CAN buses. Okay, I'm going to show you guys a couple other things on this website, and then we'll switch gears here. So under the stops tab, you can also see all the stops that are included. The first column talks about the shared stops. Coralville stops are in the next column, CAN bus, and then Iowa City stops. And then we have a map, which is also really helpful. So I'm going to do an example here where I know that my work here at the county building is Route 13. So I'm going to click on Route 13 for Iowa City. And let's say I want to use that Route 20 to get to Trader Joe's. So by clicking on those two routes, it pops up here on the map. Oops, excuse me, to show what my path of travel would look like riding the bus from my work to Trader Joe's. Okay, so that is the gist of the Bongo system. Oops, I forgot to show you guys something. The Bongo system is powered by the automatic vehicle locator system, which is on the bus, which is a fancy word for saying GPS. So if I'm on the route profile for Route 13 here, so the way that it was able to say, this is how many minutes away from the dental college this stop is, and this is how many minutes away from the dental college that route was from the GPS system in the bus. So if you zoom in here, you can see the bus icon. And as that updates and moves along the way, it will also move with the bus. And it's usually pretty accurate. So, you know, it's not dragging itself along, but it is jumping as the bus moves. So that's another way to get a prediction on when your bus is. And that's what's powering those predictions that we were seeing earlier when we had the dental college pulled up. Any questions about the Bongo system right now? Okay, so I'm going to switch gears and we're going to talk about Google Maps. So Google Maps also has all of the bus information for Coralville Transit, CAN bus, and Iowa City Transit. Unlike the Bongo system or the ICAT system and the transit app, Google is working based on the predicted times that the buses will arrive or the scheduled times, not necessarily the actual time. So Google Maps does not work with the current location of the bus. They are using information based on the scheduled time. So when the bus is supposed to be there. So Google doesn't know about any delays. However, it is a great feature to use for trip planning. A lot of people find Google platforms user-friendly, and I'm going to show you a couple of things here. So let's type in, where was I going? Trader Joe's. Okay, so if I type in Trader Joe's to the search bar, Google Maps is going to narrow me into that location and even have a picture of Trader Joe's up. If I zoom in here enough, I can actually see where the bus stops are. So there is a tiny, tiny blue square that has a white bus on it. Those indicate bus stops. So I'm hovering my mouse over that icon, and I can see that the name of that bus stop is Poncetti Way, and that bus stop is served by routes 20, 22, 24, and 25. I can actually click on that particular bus stop icon and receive information about the 4-digit ID. I can plan directions specifically from the stop, or I can pop down here to see the departure board. And all of the scheduled times that Route 20, Route 22, and Route 24 are arriving to that particular stop. So that is a great feature to get to know. I also know that if I didn't want to get off there, I could get off here along 9th Street. So let's go back to Trader Joe's. So I'm trying to plan a trip from my office to Trader Joe's. My office is 855 South Dubuque Street. So if I type that into the search bar here, it's going to provide me with, oh, it thinks that I'm going to walk. Well, I don't exactly have an hour to get there. So I'm going to switch over to the bus icon. There is a car icon, a bicycle icon, and a airline icon. So if I click on the transit bus icon, Google Maps will provide me with a couple of options for getting out to Trader Joe's from my office. So let's click on these details here. This one's I can leave at 11 a.m., which is perfect. And I would get there by 11:35. That's a pretty quick trip. Excuse me. If I click on this particular option, it shows me the step-by-step directions. So the bus stop that I'm going to board is at Benton and Clinton Street, Route 13 at 11:07. That's going to get me to downtown. Once I'm downtown, I'm going to transfer and get on the Route 20 bus and eventually end up at Trader Joe's. Well, let's say I actually can't go just yet. So I'm going to go after work, and I get off work at 4:30. There is an option to toggle here. So Google Maps is thinking you're ready to start your trip right away. But I actually want to depart at, and I'm going to switch the time here to say 4:30 p.m. Okay, so here's an option where I can take off at 4:30, 4:36, and get to Trader Joe's shortly after 5 p.m. So that is how trip planning works when you're using Google Maps. Just keep in mind that this is the scheduled time and does not take into account the any interruptions that are unplanned to service, as the ICAT's app would do, or ICAT's website or texting would do. Okay, any questions about those two platforms? We're going to switch gears and talk about the last part of the training, which is the transit app. Before I start that, are there any questions? Okay, so we're back to the PowerPoint here. And just for a short amount of time, I want to talk about the transit app. So the transit app is newer, and that's really kind of replaced, like I said, the downloads for the Bongo or the current ICAT system. So the transit app is strictly a smartphone-based application. So you can't go to the transit app website and receive information. You would only be able to access the information from your smartphone. So the transit app works specifically with the GPS system of the bus. So it knows where the buses are. And it works with the GPS system of your phone. So it knows where you are when you open the app. It should, as long as you have your location services enabled, it should know exactly where you are and provide information for how close you are to the bus routes around you and when the buses are arriving. I am going to show a video now that talks about how to use the transit app. It talks about how you can use it for trip planning. So just how we did on Google Maps there, you could do that for the transit app. And then you can also get the predictions of how many minutes away the bus is. So all of that will be showed here on this video. So I'm going to, again, switch my share. Okay. And Janae, I'm going to have you verify for me if I've got this done correctly. I'm going to start with that now. Let me know if you guys can hear the sound and all that good stuff.
Looking for the closest bus route and stop? Download the Transit app and catch a ride today. Transit is a mobile app that allows you to have real-time information for all of Johnson County's fixed route buses, Iowa City Transit, Coralville Transit, and CAMBus. Conveniently working with your phone's GPS, the Transit app shows the current location of buses, the stops closest to you, and the upcoming departure times. Here's how to use it. Download Transit from your App Store. When you open the app, the first screen you see shows the bus routes near you based on your current location. Take a closer look at a route by tapping on the route banner. Here you can see a route's path of travel and stops along the way, shown as dots. Pinch to zoom out to see the bus's current location, indicated by the bus icon. Click the X to get back to the front page of the app. Now, let's plan a trip. Let's say you're currently in downtown Iowa City and would like to ride the bus to the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics for a doctor's appointment. Tap the green search bar labeled Where To, where it says Line or Destination. Type in UIHC. Select the best search result. In this case, UIHC 200 Hawkins Drive is where you want to go. Next, the Transit app provides you with options for completing your trip. Tap on the option to see more details. If you're ready to leave right away, select the green Go button. This feature will lead you through guided audio and visual directions for your journey. But let's say your appointment isn't until later this afternoon. Touch the red X to get back to the trip options. Tap on the Leave Now button and change your selection to Arrive By. Then, scroll the time to when you want to get there and select Done. Tap on the route that best meets your needs. After making your selection, you'll see the directions and the time at which you need to leave. Tap the bell icon to set a reminder for when it's time to head to the bus stop. Slide to select how early you want to be reminded, and tap Create Reminder. The reminder will push a notification to your phone when it's time to leave for your appointment. From here, tap Go and be on your way. Now you know the basic navigation and trip planning features of the Transit app. Other features you may want to check out include favoriting your most frequented routes, and up-to-the-minute service alerts, such as detours or other notices that may impact your travel. Contact your transit system for more information, or connect with the Johnson County Mobility Coordinator for additional resources and videos.
All right, everybody. That concludes our training for today. As you can see there, the Transit app is a great app to get to know. It really works with the best of both of the other platforms that we talked about, where you can do the trip planning and know where the bus is specifically. I'm going to pause the recording here or stop the recording here.